It's Colleen, the Preparedness Pro. I probably always sound like I'm surprised, like, whoa, we're live. Oh, I guess there's a part of me that always is. Like, wait, it worked. I actually learned how to push a button. Yay. Okay, let me get Instagram on board because I always forget. Poor Instagram. I'm sorry. You guys are like the redheaded stepchild of the universe. My universe, anyway. I'm so sorry. So today we're going to talk about an interesting topic that I think you would like. If not you, you definitely have some friends who would like this one. How to get your spouse on board with your preparedness efforts. That's a doozy, isn't it? Maybe even your kids, but this is more geared towards spouses, not family members. Really, this is about your best friend that you married for time and all eternity, or just till death do you part, or what have you. But it's your spouse, okay? It's your best buddy. It's your better half, and I'm sure that it feels a little lonely not having them on board with you in such an important effort, something that's so important to you that you get anxious, you get heart palpitations because of it sometimes. Well, that's because you're doing it wrong for starters, but I can understand that's an issue. So we're going to go ahead and deal with that directly today, and I'm just gonna snap through it right away. Basically, how to affect and influence that skeptical spouse when it comes to preparedness efforts. It's a query I hear frequently in my line of work. I affectionately call it the $64 million question. Surprisingly, the question isn't dominated by any one particular sex. It seems like the men and women are both equally skeptical when it comes to the topic. Believe it or not, you would think that it's usually the women who are skeptical. But I run into a lot of female preppers whose spouses are very, very skeptical. And it's tough to have one family member, especially somebody you're so close to, focused on something so important without the support of knowledge, that they could contribute, their enthusiasm when you get down, instead of having to go to faceless strangers on Facebook and say, I have a problem or I have a question, and their additional expertise. So being on the same page of this sort of boils down to more than just being able to share in a hobby, because as we know, it's literally life-saving. And so that's why I'm going to address this query today with some very specific and deliberate strategies. Now, you may listen to some of these strategies and go, well, wait a minute, that's a strategy of preparedness. Yes, it is. It's amazing how they go together with helping our spouses get on board. But that's what we're going to do today. So what's the number one reason why people get divorced? It's money. And money is usually the number one reason why a spouse is not on board with food storage acquisition or preparedness supplies acquisition. Because the minute you go out and you put a bunch of money on a credit card to obtain some types of emergency preparedness supplies, that's what they're thinking of, you've created a valid barrier. And even if your spouse was on board with preparedness, that shouldn't be an acceptable action. We have to be as prudent in acquiring our supplies as we are in the fact that we do prepare for a rainy day. And I assure you that when I come home with a couple bags of supplies, if I was able to tell my spouse that I got them for nearly free or cheap, that would take the success of their objections down a couple notches. It would make it much more successful conversation. And I guarantee you that if you're going to say, look, I got this on a great deal, and here's how I'm going to use it, and then actually use it that way, we'll get to that in just a second, that's going to take away their most strident objections. So, like I said, you've got divorces that ultimately end as the result of a disagreement about finances. Emergency preparedness efforts are thwarted the same way. If you are prudent and consistent in your preparedness efforts, you're going to be able to prepare without starting World War III in your home. So that's the first way, money. Next is use and familiarity. Yes, that's a preparedness principle, but it's also how you get your spouse on board. Any spouse would be understandably frustrated if they had their partner bring home a relatively, large purchase or bag or whatever, a significant investment, such as a solar oven or a pressure cooker or a Glock handgun, and only have it collect dust and take up valuable space. That would be very frustrating to them, and I can understand that. No purchase you make for preparedness, though, should be disconnected or foreign to you. You should incorporate it in your life on a regular basis. I always tell people, you don't have what you can't remember. You don't have what you can't find. Well, if you're not incorporating it in a regular basis, you can't remember it, and you can't find it. Had some folks go do a preparedness challenge with me for 2 weeks, and they could not find their sleeping bags to save their life. Literally. For pretend purposes, they could not find their sleeping bags. And that was just so frustrating to them. They knew they had them. They had bought some of the best, and they couldn't find them. They found them after the challenge, but actually 2 days at the end of the challenge, they found them. But pretty frustrating, especially since for the challenge, they were looking with headlamps instead of, fully lit rooms. So that made it a little bit more challenging. But anyway, obviously, a handgun or a solar oven, that has preparedness applications to it, but you need to show how it's a multi-purpose tool. So, for example, I used to have a lot of folks that would attend my Bring on the Sun solar oven class and tell me that they had owned a solar oven for ages, but they never knew how to use it. And obviously they bought it just for emergencies, and then they just socked it away. Arrgh. That makes me cringe. I have to wonder how their spouse felt about tripping over this big lug of inconvenience that was purchased just in case of an alien attack, right? I mean, you can understand why they might be a little frustrated. If you don't use it, folks, it's no help to you. And it doesn't get attached to a realistic scenario in your spouse's mind. When you can't present a delicious meal that was prepared in your pressure cooker, for example, the doubting spouse will simply see that meal as a yummy, simple, and efficient way of cooking, not as another expense for the fantasy what-if scenario that they don't believe will actually occur. That can be just one more cooking tool that you want. I wanted an electric Instapot. I wanted a Ninja Cook. I want a solar oven. That's you have to use them and become familiar with them. Hey, honey, how about we camp in the tent out in the front room tonight? I mean, come on, make it fun, make it part of your life, as opposed to having it be about the attack of aliens or financial collapse or something that they can't wrap their mind around. Okay. So if you use your tools and preparedness supplies and it's sporadic, it's going to send the wrong message to the doubters in your life about your level of commitment to preparedness. And nobody wants to be throwing money at something flaky that is just the flavor of the week. And I know a lot of us have those kind of hobbies where this week it's wood carving and this week it's scrapbooking, and you have to have all the scrapbooking supplies. If you're committed enough to use the money out of your family budget to acquire it, then you really should be serious enough to utilize and be familiar with the item as well. Frankly, I had the luxury when I was married to be equally yoked with my husband in all of our preparedness efforts. But I can assure you that even that being the case, if I were to ask him to get me something that costs more than $50, I darn well better be able and be prepared to show him why I would like such a tool, and then immediately use it when it comes home. For example, he had bought me a large pressure canner for our anniversary. And so I made sure that I was canning meat that very weekend, showed him how easy it was. I was all enthusiastic. So he's thinking, okay, happy spouse, this is good, right? They like that. And then followed up with making a couple of yummy meals from the results of that canning. I mean, think about this. If you're the guy in the household and you bring home a canner, she's going to look at you like you got four heads. But if you make it an awesome little teaching experiment and you're doing the canning and suddenly you cooked a couple meals with this canned stuff, you've changed the dialogue. You've changed the frame of reference. You've changed a mind. You can bet that my spouse did not feel like that purchase was a waste. So if you bring home that handgun, be prepared to practice with it and participate in as many classes as you can. If you purchase the food saver, start using it. I think you get my point. Next is education. Use every opportunity to factually educate your spouse, not preach to them. For example, make this scrumptious casserole or brisket in your solar oven. And when you present it to your spouse and family for dinner, tell them how easy it was and how it didn't require any electricity. Isn't that fabulous? I just did this with the sun. And I got to tell you that sun-kissed foods and meals taste amazing. I mean, you could even do a little taste test. Make brownies in your regular oven and brownies in the solar oven and have them figure out which was made which way. And they're going to like the brownies in the solar oven better. I can tell you. Anyway, you don't even need to mention the word emergency or preparedness. That the dots are going to start to get connected eventually so that you don't have to translate everything into plans for an emergency. And if you aren't able to spend money on something until your spouse is converted, then borrow someone else's and demonstrate it for them. You're going to be better off mentally for having used it successfully, and you'll be better off for putting your mind in the position of a student rather than only a teacher. It's a win-win situation with the approach. And your spouse will see that you're committed to actually learning about this. This isn't something that you just have all the answers of. You're learning, you're committed. In order to properly educate those around you, you've got to be sure to be fully educated yourself so that your teachings, so to speak, your example isn't just theory or supposition. It's much more readily accepted when delivered this way. I mean, like, for example, the solar oven meal can be, guess how much money it didn't cost you for me to create dinner tonight? You know, you didn't have to fire up the stove, which means you didn't have to fire up the AC, which means, . So, all right. Next is patience. Your own preparedness efforts take patience and faith. The same holds true in educating the doubters in your life. Patience is usually only fortified by consistency. And if the doubting spouse in your life sees a crack in your resolve, they tend to go after it mercilessly. It's not like they're being mean, but they keep picking at it. So make your plan and then execute it with the resources and everything that you have available to you. And just be patient and faithful that those around you will receive their own enlightenment about preparedness little by little as well. Your example is going to go a long way in helping them to understand and internalize it for themselves and the importance of the mindset. And like I said, if it's not some fly-by-night thing, they're going to see that you're committed to it on a regular basis, that this is who you are, then they love who you are, then they're going to be more likely to accept it. So keep that in mind. All right, last point is immersion. Maybe I'll have another point. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, but immersion. A lot of folks believe that, doomsday will never come. They've heard about it for so long. They're just plain tired of hearing it and being beat up by it, which I gotta say, it's kind of interesting because COVID did happen, did it not? And it really surprises me today to hear of spouses not on board with preparedness. So I don't know if it's because they think that their spouse is going way overboard, that the worst it's going to get is COVID, or because COVID was the worst it's going to get, it's not going to happen again. Lightning doesn't strike twice, or what? I would think that it's a little easier to demonstrate to our spouse the likelihood of something going south. But, that doesn't help. That doesn't help you guys. Me saying all this. It's just me thinking out loud. Really, it's just not a reality to them. at all. And to the unbeliever, it's just a fantasy created by the makers of bottled water and camp stoves and generators. So one of the easiest ways to educate someone on the reality of preparedness is to help immerse them gently and surreptitiously in a world in which such kind of preparedness might be needed. So movies and books and even hypothetical questions like, hey, honey, what do you think we would do if ... They're really helpful in educating the mind of someone who may not get it. And I'm a big fan of the book Alas, Babylon by Pat Frank, and also 1 Second After by William Fortune. And of course, Patriots, the godfather of the books. I just love them. Although Alas, Babylon, you could argue was the godfather of those kind of books. Pat Frank came before them. James Rawls, awesome. But these are enjoyable books that also cause some enlightenment, and even the most educated, prepper to consider the reality of areas or possibilities that they may have missed, previously. So I have found that the right movies to work towards this purpose, hey, honey, let's sit down and watch Independence Day or Twister or Outbreak or Red Dawn. These tactics, psychological tactics, are beneficial to those who need to mentally expose themselves to the possibility of unexpected events. And when you get them immersed in it, it's more likely to have those kind of conversations. Honey, what do you think we would do if this happened? You find yourself mulling over what you've read and you've viewed, and you're more likely to ask yourself, what would I do if? So I wouldn't be a very good preparedness pro consultant or instructor if I didn't encourage you to take advantage of classes and do it together. Take CERT classes together. Maybe it would be nice to hear somebody else talking about, in the event somebody starts choking next to you, you do this. Or in the event that this shuts down, you do this. Hearing it from someone else other than you, like CERT training, for example. It doesn't have to be about handling the end of the world. It can simply be about being a better asset to the community. And it's really in how you frame these things that will determine whether or not you're successful. So obviously getting those you love and care for on board with preparedness is an important task. And unfortunately, there really isn't a quick fix for it. Your efforts will need to be informed and confident and prudent and patient. But I can assure you, because I've seen it happen, I've walked people through this path, that if you use these efforts that I've explained, you will have the best chance of being successful. And you will also be better prepared, which, it's a win-win. So that's all I've really got to share with you today. I've got an appointment this afternoon, so it's going to be a quick one. And I hope that it was beneficial for you. And I hope that you can start using it and get your wonderful, loving, kind, fabulous, the person you wanted to spend your life with spouse on board with your preparedness efforts. So good luck. Bye-bye.